back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Renee Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Dr. Neeta Bhushan. Dr. Neeta and I are going to be talking on the topic, how to get back up when life knocks you down. Welcome, Dr. Neeta.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here, Myrna. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And I'm so excited for this topic. Yeah, it's an important one. So stick around. We're going to be, passing some nuggets on here for you. All right, well, let me give you a short bio and introduction to Dr. Neeta Bhushan. She is a cosmetic dentist turned three-time international best-selling author and world-renowned emotional health advocate. She's also the founder of the Global Grit Institute, a wellness education platform for optimizing well-being, and co-founded Dharma Coaching Institute, a coaching organization training coaches to become the highest versions of themselves. Neeta has shared her thought, leadership, and grit on resilience on international stages and as the host of her popular podcast, The Brave Table. After realizing how trapped she felt running the multi-billion-dollar dental practice she built, Neeta embarked on a journey that led her across 45 countries as she researched blending the intersection of human behavior, ancient wisdom, Eastern philosophy, and therapeutic psychology. That knowledge, along with other life experiences, overcoming multiple adversities, which include being orphaned at a young age, surviving an abusive marriage, and extensive loss, contributed to the powerful message of resilience she shares in her book. Neeta is the mother of two and currently lives in Austin, Texas with her husband and children. Boy, Neeta, that was a rounded bio.
That was full.
You are very accomplished, and I love the fact that you're doing a lot of things. So congratulations on your work and being a trailblazer.
Well, it's a pleasure to sit with a fellow trailblazer as well.
Thank you. I like that. Yes. All right. So let's start off here. So our topic is today how to get back up when life knocks you down, and I'm going to start off with that. Why did you make that your message? Why is being knocked down beneficial, as you say, for change? Can you share your story of being knocked down and how that story transformed your life into being a coach, into on emotional health? I'm sure we're leaving dentistry way behind in the dust.
Yes. Well, actually, it started out that way, and I think that having recognized a lot of the paths and past stories in our life, the trials, the tribulations, the setbacks, the challenges, and I've definitely been through many suck moments myself, and I'm not immune to these life challenges. And I think that if we allow ourselves to fall, and most of us are just resisting the fall unless the fall hits us in the face, maybe, metaphorically, literally sometimes. And that became a message early on in my life. I grew up to immigrant parents. I grew up in Chicago. And for the first, I want to say, pretty much first half of my life, it was definitely dark. We definitely were struggling. I became a child caretaker at 10 years old. And I think for me, going through the process of everyone, whoever's listening has ever, had a parent or a caregiver get sick and you're a child yourself, it totally shifts your mindset. You go into this fight or flight mode. Our bodies go into, all right, we've got to keep ourselves alive. And for me, it was in the form of, okay, how am I going to support my mom? Because my mom got sick. She got breast cancer. And I was about 10 years old, and she succumbed to that journey. And it took her about 6 years. She was in and out of remission in the hospitals. I was the oldest of two younger brothers. And that began my journey. And it began my journey of resiliency and grit, which is what I teach now. And for a while, I had all of these, uh, just angered moments, and just even feeling helpless and hopeless. And a year after my mom died, my brother, he was 16 months older than me. He was coming out of school, and we went to different high schools, and he suddenly collapsed in front of his high school, and he had an asthma attack. And so just during the course of suffering such a major loss, and this was almost immediately a year after my mom died, like it
Okay.
took my yeah, and it took my family into complete shock. And
Wow.
so I think that having gone through, those low lows, and we weren't even done yet with the trauma, 2 years after that, then my dad would have his diagnosis of lung cancer. And so all before 19 years old, I lose my mom and my brother and my dad, and I
Your
have to
dad.
be a caretaker to my youngest brother, who was, 14 years old at the time. And yeah, it definitely knocks you down. And yeah, you're kind of mad at the world. I come entering my 20s thinking I have the biggest chip on my shoulder, and I didn't want anybody to feel bad for me, and I'm going to prove everyone wrong. This is like chapter 2 in my book, by the way. Um, chapter 3 in my book.
Mhm.
And really, I think that a lot of folks who come from, underprivileged black backgrounds, or just they grew up, in tough circumstances, situations. Mine was loss. Some could look, the traumas can look different. And I
Mhm.
think many times we go into, I don't want to tell anybody what I've been through.
True.
Um, because I don't want to be the victim. Or you're like, oh gosh, why me? Why me? And
Mhm.
and I think that for my mission here is to kind of say, well, why not you? Why not you? That this is going this you're the chosen one. You were chosen for this path. You were chosen, that's why you're listening to this podcast today. So something led you here, and all of the building blocks, that the circumstances, the setbacks, it's led you to this chapter, this time, this space, before you right now. If that didn't happen, Myrna, I don't think I'd be sitting here. And I think that for a while I resented that. And I talk about, four main emotions in my book. And most people are, they grapple with these, I want to put in quotes, quote unquote, negative emotions, but they give us information. I had so much resentment, for my past for a while. And it's resentment, judgment. Sometimes we judge ourselves, jealousy, and as well as disappointment and frustration. And these are feelings that often we don't want to, we judge ourselves for feeling this way, and we squash down, we diminish, and um, we don't want to feel. And of course, I can add anger and rage there too, because that's a favorite for a lot of people. And I talk about these on how to really unpack that, because that's really the beginning of my story. A decade after I would lose my family, I would get into a very narcissistic, abusive relationship, because at the end of the day, I really wanted love. And I wanted love so bad that I was willing to sacrifice my own worth and my own divinity for myself, to be at the hands of someone else, until I would then have the courage 11 years ago and walk away from it all. Even though on the outside, it may have looked that I had this big dream career, I finally got out of the tunnel of my life and finally saw, the silver lining. There was a lot more to go. That was really when my healing journey would begin. So, Myrna, you asked, why has this been your mission? And I think it's because in our, beautiful expanse of life, we can really appreciate the ups and the downs. It gives us contrast. And it's through that contrast. You and I were talking about our clothes earlier.
Yeah,
And
right.
you said you're wearing dull, and I don't even think that's dull. I think it's
That's
beautiful. It's
it.
a beautiful mauve color. And I'm wearing green, but we can appreciate both sides because there is
Right, right,
contrast
right, right.
there. And I
So when
think
you're
that
in
there's
yours, and you said this is your brand color.
it is. Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
to really appreciate the walks and the different paths that we have in our life has become my life's mission.
Wow. That is a beautiful and a sad story. And a lot of times they say that you can't look at a book by its cover. I mean, I'm seeing you so beautiful and so bright and so cheery. And, anybody would be able to say, look at you and not see that trauma, not see what you had to go through from the age of 10 years old. That is difficult. My parents are 83 and 85, and I know what a blessing it is to have them in my life, to see their grandchildren, and for me to be able to call up my mom and to be orphaned, and then your brother too. Yeah, but I love what you said though. And that is why we do this work, because someone might have a similar experience, maybe even not as traumatic as yours. Maybe they lost a mom or they lost a dad, one person, and they would feel that their life is over because they didn't have those moments. I can't call my mom, or you know what I mean, when something goes wrong, I have no one to talk to, and they look at the things that they've lost, right? And because they look at the things that they've lost, they can't part the clouds to see the sun. But what you have done, and what a lot of coaches have done, is that they've taken the lessons learned from digging themselves out of this experience and created an opportunity. So I love that that's your tagline, because you say, when life knocks you down, look for the opportunity. And I will tell you, almost 100% of people that are coaching,
Mm-hmm.
as they have found the light in the darkness, and
Yeah.
now they want to help other women or help other men come through that. So thank you for sharing your story. It was a great story. And the other thing I want to touch on, you touched on it right away, but whenever we are lacking, and I'm going to talk about women because that's what I know.
Yeah.
Whenever we're lacking, like you talked about the love, we attract abusive relationships. You
Right.
you framed it as that you wanted so much to be loved, but chances are that it was an unconscious thing, that you attracted that relationship because of the hurt and the pain that's in your inside, and
Mm-hmm.
somehow our aura attracts abusive people into our lives. You want to
Totally.
touch on that a bit before I move on to the next
Oh
question?
yeah, absolutely. So I think that many times, I like to call it as medicine because I was in medicine before. And, many times we attract the medicine that we need to heal. It's kind of like what we resist persists, right? And if we keep resisting it, it's going to keep showing up and
I
showing up
like
and showing up. And what we don't feel, we don't get to heal. And I think for me, I didn't really go through the grief. I didn't really go through the feelings of the loss of my mom, my dad, my brother. I was in survival mode, and I'm like, okay, we got to get out of this tunnel. And so
that.
getting into my 20s, I had my coping mechanisms. My coping mechanisms were I stayed in relationships far too long. Romantic ones that didn't really serve because I was afraid of being alone, because I was trying to fill that void. And I
Right.
think a lot of times we do something because it is so painful to go into that void. It's so uncomfortable to feel those feels, which is why it's so easy now. We have the greatest dopamine device ever, which is our phones. And all we have to do if we're having a bad day, swipe, okay, go to whatever app and boom, poosh, it's over, done. We don't have to feel it anymore. And then we go home and then we turn on the TV and we can Netflix all night. And again, poof, we don't have to feel that until something we start to feel the anxiety, like the emotions start to build in our bodies, and it has nowhere to go. For myself, it was actually a detrimental situation where my life was threatened one night, and I had no choice
To
but
go.
to say, oh my goodness, I'm waking up. And this is what I call that, that process, that framework in the book, How to Fly Forward. It's, you have a fall. And that fall, like I said before, when we started, Myrna, I said it could be a literal fall, a metaphorical fall. And for myself, it was okay, like this is happening. I am not safe here. This relationship is no longer safe. I need to leave. And when you're in so much of that pain, that you start letting people in. And the first people that I kind of told, even though I was so ashamed, even in because I grew up with immigrant parents from India and the Philippines, it's divorce is a taboo.
Mhm.
And it took so much courage and bravery to leave. But that's stage 2 of this framework, is you get ignited, and you get ignited in a way where if you have that medical diagnosis, or if you have, your child is sick, or, you just got, you just lost a job, or maybe you're just not feeling in that right mindset anymore. You've lost it. Whatever that was, you've lost it. There is now a trigger that says, nope, you got to do this. And that's
Mhm.
the ignition. And for me, the ignition was, I'm leaving, packing my bags, and telling my aunts and the matriarchs that supported me, my aunts, my grandmother, that I was actually in this situation, and including the team that was working with me as a cosmetic dentist. I remember going into that practice that day and saying, this is where I'm at, and I need support. I can't do this alone. I don't know if I can keep this office open, because right now I'm going through the darkest time of my life. And
Aw.
even in saying that, I was letting people in, and they were introducing me to other people that can help: therapists, coaches, healers, different ways that they could support. Because why? Because I said yes. And that is the beauty of, many times, uh, to attract what we need to heal ourselves. And I needed to see that, all right, self love comes from me. It doesn't come from pouring into other people when I have such an empty cup, when I haven't done the healing myself. This was the
Okay.
first time in my life that I could actually focus on the grieving, that I can actually say, I can't do this. The 3 words, those 3 words literally saved my life. I need help. And I
Wow.
think, a lot of us go through these stages and times in life where, things can get really big, but you always have those 3 words. I need help.
Yeah. Something, you mentioned your, immigrant parents, and I'm not quite sure whether it's immigrant parents, from Guyana, but I have a very hard time asking for help myself. I always think that, I can do things on my own, and, you're ashamed that you don't want to ask for help unless it's somebody like your mom or somebody that's really close, your children or something like that. But it's very hard for me to call up a friend or something and say, I need help. So I'm glad that were able to put that aside, maybe because you were at the rock bottom, and you asked for help, and that is great. Now, you mentioned something that I had a question on here, but maybe we might need to expand on that. So you mentioned flying forward. You talk about the fly forward framework. What
Mhm.
is that?
Yeah, well, we kind of got into it a little bit, right? Where, that first stage 1 is when you have that breakup, when you have that fall, when you go through a loss, when you maybe get sick yourself, you go through, financial troubles. You look at your bank account and you're like, how did I get here? and you have to make a decision. And then we get into that ignition phase where it's like, are you going to stay or are you going to go? Are you going to keep doing the same thing, or are you going to actually ask for help? Are you going to, keep on where you're at, or are you going to say, you know what, I am going to book a session with my healer, my therapist, my coach. I'm going to sign up for that training because I said I wanted to lose the 20 pounds and I can't take it anymore. This is where the ignition is. This is where, we that fire is lit, under our bellies. And we're like, okay, we're going to do something completely different. That's scary. That's uncomfortable, because I don't want to go back to that reality. That reality is painful. And I'm going to step forth. So it's kind of like we get into then stage 3, which is the phoenix rising from the ashes. And in the phoenix rising from its ashes, we're actually asking a different question. We're actually saying, okay, wow. Okay, this is uncomfortable. This is messy. It's not perfect. This is chaotic. And I can't explain it right now, but I'm feeling a little light. I'm feeling that because I am in this mess, that I am rising like the phoenix, and I'm leaning into things that are uncomfortable. So maybe it's being imperfect. Maybe it's saying yes to a new hobby, saying yes to, something that really scares you that you've been putting off. Maybe it's saying yes to going to the gym with a trainer, or sitting in a time of the suck where it does actually suck. And you're okay with feeling the uncomfortable feelings there because you've been suppressing it for far too long. And that's happened in my case, where I said, I don't even care anymore. Like there was uncontrollable crying and heaving. And, Myrna, when we've had a really, terrible thing that we've gone through, we think it's so terrible and we just need that good cry. Well, scientifically, the cry signifies us getting closer to ourselves. And most of us are so
Cleansing too,
afraid.
right?
And
Cleansing.
and it releases our tears, release the
Yes,
cortisol. It's releasing the
right.
stress that we're holding.
Mhm.
And we wonder why we don't cry, enough, because we're so afraid of these tears. But that's actually releasing our, stress hormone, and it's bringing us closer to ourselves. That also releases oxytocin,
Mhm.
which is one of those hormones that make us feel good and make us feel connected. If you've ever actually looked at, wow, I actually feel better when I've cried, instead of judging it. See the next time that happens.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that, so that's that rising stage. And when we get into the magnify stage is, I'm in full acceptance. I'm in full acceptance of my reality right now, that I have this new confidence that, maybe I am starting to go on dates, or maybe I am starting to invest in this thing, or maybe I am starting to get better at public speaking, or whatever the thing is that I want to be able to transform my life with. And then we get into thriving. And thriving means that, it doesn't mean that we're immune to falling again, because it's a cyclical cycle, right? We
yeah.
are going to have things that challenge us. But
Mhm.
thriving just means that now you have things that are built in. You now check in with your boundaries. You now check in with people that support you. I call them my SSP, our soul support posse. And in our soul support posse, maybe it's 1 or 2 friends, maybe it's family members. You mentioned your amazing parents. Oh my God, that's amazing. But to
Yeah,
have people in your life that you can actually lean in on, that
yeah. Mhm.
can hold that space and be present for sometimes the bigness of your emotions, that can say, you know what, I got you. Don't worry about this.
Yes.
And thriving also means that you have your personal check in. I call it our POC, your personal observational check in, to see, how am I actually doing? Do I
Feeling, right.
really want to go to that thing this weekend? Or am I doing it because I'm obliged to somebody else? Can I actually say no? And what will that mean? So we redefine our boundaries to work for us.
Right. Yes. I love that. So I understand the question now, flying forward is that yes, you're moving from that stuck position and you have stages that you're going through. And you're right. The very first stage is making the decision to do something about it, whether it's, right, going back to school or leaving or, making a decision that, you know what, I don't like where I'm at, and it's up to me to do something about it, and yes, and a lot of people don't um have the courage, I would say, to make that first move. But after you make that first move, it's like momentum. It just builds up, right? So I'm pretty sure, like you said, the making the decision to leave, then asking for help, and then the next step, and you are starting to fly. And I love the word fly, because that's exactly what happens. You're building up confidence as you're going along, and you're going to the next level, and sooner or later then you're up at the top of the level, and you don't even remember what it looked like in that gutter.
So
Because you've
true.
so much transcended it. That's beautiful. Yep.
It's so true. And I think, it's one of these frameworks that can give perspective to somebody that's going through a rough time, because many times we don't see the end of the tunnel and we can't see ourselves into thriving. And
Right.
it's not just about getting to the other side, because most of us, which was why, I wrote the book, That Sucked, Now What? It's not that this sucks. It's that sucked, meaning that the first part of it is to
Right.
acknowledge
Mhm.
what didn't go our way. It's to acknowledge that, things may happen that's completely out of our control, but that your second chapter or your next chapter could be the now what.
And now
And
what?
that
Yes.
now what you get to define. You get to
Yes.
define what that looks like. And it may look completely different. And, that's the point. It's the point. It's to see again the contrast, and, that both emotions can live in the whole mix of emotions. You can be excited, but you can be scared,
Of
to
course.
do that new venture. You can be
Yes.
reserved, but you can be open to talk to and build this relationship with somebody new. So, and it's so which is why I love the fact that, all of those emotions can live together if we allow it. If we say, you know what? Yeah, I can be grieving my loss of someone, but I can also find moments of joy as well.
Oh yeah, of course. Yes. Find something that makes you happy. Yeah. All right. So one of the amazing things of your story is your resilience, and you founded the Global Grit Institute. But your resilience, yes. Wow. So it's almost like if that your story helped to build your purpose, because yes, that is a lot of things that God threw at you, and it was for this purpose. So let's talk now about the resilience, because you talk about something that's called the bounce factor to build and increase your resilience. So how did you do it, and how do you teach your clients to build this resilience?
Yeah, well, so for, those listeners who have ever been taught about resiliency or resilience, it's, we think mental toughness. We think we have to be strong. In fact, when I was growing up, my parents and my dad specifically, he was from India, and he would say, Neeta, you're so strong. You're so strong. And I would hear this over and over and over again. And, and I think that as parents, now that I have two of my own children, I question myself whether or not I want to even share that with them, because that's also implying that they also can't be soft, that they also can't have compassion for themselves. And this is this mental model of like, yes, we have to be mentally tough, which is what I, also would talk about. And, I grew up with that. But I think it's safe to say, even when we look at the root of the word resilience, the root of the word comes from Latin, of course, and it's resiliere, which means the literal definition is to bounce back. And so if I were to take, a glass, and if I were to take a glass of water, and, you would say, well, Neeta, a glass is tough. It's tough. It's strong. It holds things together. But if I actually let that piece of glass go, that's going to shatter into a million pieces, right? And so if I were to also take that same example and think of maybe basketball. If I hold up a basketball in my hands, or maybe like those tiny little bouncy balls that you probably see at a kid's party,
Mhm.
or stress ball,
Mhm.
we can squeeze that ball or even that basketball and it has a little bit of give. It has a little bit of give where it's still strong, but it's kind of flexible in a way. Not very much, but just a little bit. Enough to when you let it go, it's going to bounce. It's going to sometimes bounce back higher. And so that is a definition of resiliency that I want people to adopt, that I want people to really redefine, because it can make room for both emotions, which is why I created the bounce factor. And I talk about the bounce factor in part 2 of that Suck Now What, in a way where there are 4 aspects to building your bounce. And there are 4 aspects, when people ask me, how do you actually strengthen your resiliency? Well, I talk about a concept in the book on your bounce factor will strengthen your audacious resiliency, because we're having so much intentionality on how we are looking at the 4 different aspects or 4 pillars that make up your bounce factor. And the first part of that is looking back at your past, looking back at your upbringing. I think I shared with you, Myrna, when we first started the conversation, I didn't want to look back at my past. I wanted to say, nope, I don't even want to look back there. I am leaving this. And there was a time where I didn't even want to introduce myself to people, especially when I was that young, because I knew that it was going to lead into, so tell me about your parents, or tell me about, where did you grow up? And,
Yeah.
as a young person, I mean, at all phases of our life, we want to fit in. We don't want to be
Right.
the new kid on the block that like is, is it gets shunned or rejected, or is like the weird one, or, oh gosh, that's a lot of drama that she's got. So I had all of these preconceived notions, like we all do. And we just want to fit in, right? And so for me, in teaching you the first aspect of your bounce factor, to say, you know what, let's look up at our upbringing. What were we taught around our emotions? Is some emotions good or bad? Uh, were we appreciated for just being good all the time, being respectful all the time? And where did our emotions and feelings of feeling unworthy or sad or angry or depressed or overwhelmed, where did that fit? Were you told to, stop it right now? I'm going to give you something to cry about, because that's what my parents said to me, or
Yes.
and the list goes on and on, right?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
suck it up, or don't you dare do that,
Yes.
I'll give
Yes.
you something to cry about, right? So when we've had
Yes. Yes.
all of
We
these
seem
types
to
of
have the
things,
same upbringing.
yeah, yeah. Well, thankfully we know better, right? We know better,
Yeah.
and we can break those generational traumas, those generational, cycles. And I think that we can only do that if we are able to be brave to look back at our past. And this is also not just when you're a little kid, but just in your past, even of what happened last week, what happened last month. Can we make amends to it? Because we are not the same person. You are not going to be the same person from when you started this podcast to after this, after you listen
No,
to this podcast.
my mind would have been
Absolutely.
expanded.
1,000%.
Once it's expanded, it can't come back. Right.
And
Right.
and yeah, and
Mhm.
what you know now, you can't
Yes.
unknow. So now that we know and we're aware of, oh wow, I did get that saying from my father. I did get that saying from my mom. Or you know what? I wasn't given space. I was made fun of when I was crying when I was little. So of course, I don't think I can cry in front of other people. Or I
Right.
tried to hide my emotions, right? And so that's kind of the upbringing piece, is let's make peace with what we couldn't control in our past and how we are actually learning and unlearning that. And then the second part of this is your current environment. we can look at our current environment and say, are we invoking what I call good stress? What is that good stress barometer? And you're probably like, why would you want good stress?
Good
And what
stress,
is
right,
good
right, yeah.
stress? And who is
That's a
calling
new
it
term to me, right?
good stress in our life? Well, good stress can look like leaning into and exploring your edges, exploring what is comfortable for you and what is maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone. I'm saying let's go into out of our comfort zone. I'm not saying let's jump out of a plane tomorrow, but maybe you want to improve your health, and maybe the edge of your comfort zone is walking a mile a day, walking more than 10 minutes. Maybe the edge of your comfort zone is not eating, or tossing out the unhealthy sweets, replacing it with something else. Or maybe the edge of your comfort zone is going, meatless on Mondays or no carbs on Thursdays or whatever that looks like. Or maybe it's going to the gym, or maybe it's signing up with that coach or therapist that you've been hearing about for a long time. And you're kind of like, I don't know if that's for me. Well, maybe that's exploring your edges. That's exploring getting out of your comfort zone. Maybe it's, spending time with your kid or your grandkid, or, reaching out to someone like a friend that, you want to get to know or you haven't seen in a while, reaching out to somebody that has wronged you and say, you know what, I'm so sorry. Like I want us to reconnect. Can we start over? This is leaning into our edges and stepping out and invoking good stress, because the more we lean into those difficult conversations that make us want to run away, that make us want to say, nope, I don't do confrontation. Well, maybe you do, and you can do it in a way that feels really good. Or maybe you are that person that's like, you know what, I am going to take that cold shower because I know that cold showers make me feel really good. So, and it could look so different, but
Good
to
examples, good examples. Yes, yes,
challenge
yes.
yourself in that way. And then part 3 of your bounce factor, and this is so important because this is something that we've been talking about kind of through this whole conversation, is exploring your capacity to feel. So increasing your emotional capacity. So if you are typically okay at maybe getting upset, and somebody really wronged you and you're feeling really upset. Or maybe you're somebody that squashes when she's feeling angry because you judge yourself, or you've judged yourself because you got mad at a friend, but like you shouldn't be getting mad. Feel your feelings. We have to feel in order to heal. But I want you to ask yourself, okay, what is that feeling showing me? Am I really hurt right now? Was I suppressing something? And the same thing with joy. If you're constantly complaining, then maybe we can invite more joy into our life. So it's the opposite, right? And so you want to invite the opposite emotion of what either you've been avoiding, and why have you been avoiding it? And then finally, it's our radical self awareness. Can we build our RSA? And can we build our RSA so we are feeling so good about the choices that we make, and we can lean in on our intuition? And our intuition is just checking in with ourselves to say, am I is this feeling really good right now? Am I doing the best that I can right now? Is this really for me right now, or should I take a break, take a pause, say no? That's really cultivating that muscle of awareness to say, I know they won't be happy that I'm not coming, but am I going to do myself a favor for saying no to them
Right,
and saying yes to me right now?
right. Wow. That was a mouthful. Yes, I got to remember my circle backs. Okay, well, the first one I want to mention is that analogy of the basketball and the glass was brilliant. I'm sitting here, and of course, I'm listening deeply, and it's working in my brain, and I'm going there and talking about the little give, because yes, you can be hard and soft at the same time. I love that. And if you're too hard, then you're gonna shatter like the glass. I absolutely love that analogy. Using analogies and using stories, a lot of people are able to comprehend and to process So you've used a lot of great stories. So that was great. You talked about the bounce, because yes, you want to bounce back. I love you talked about the different stages of your bounce. And as you were talking about the good stress, I thought that was amazing. And of course, when people are talking, you're listening deeply, but you're also interpreting. That's what your mind and your brain is doing. And I never heard the word good stress before, but as you started explaining it, and I realize that right now I'm putting myself through some good stress. I'm reading the book, The Power of the Now by Eckhart Tolle. And he's talking about, like this morning, I was doing an exercise of watching your mind, watching your thoughts, about watching it like if you're watching for the mouse to come out of the hole. And I'll tell you, that is good stress. That's taking me to my edges, because you want to be, the whole point of this is to be present and not be always in your thoughts. And you know that we have all these thoughts, and we're most of the time in our thoughts, and we're not present. And that is good stress, because I'm constantly now trying to make sure that I'm in the present, and my now, and making sure that I love his analogy about your connection to the past and the connection to the future, right? So that is great. And it fits into our conversation here as well, because if you're bouncing, right, the only way you can bounce is if you release your psychological attachment to the past and to the future. So it is great. I see you smiling there.
Thank you for that reflection. I mean,
What was that?
No, I was just going to say thank you for that reflection, love. I think that, yeah, it's one of the tools that we definitely need to have in our tool belt as we evolve. And I love Eckhart Tolle's books. Yeah, it's one of my favorite all-time personal growth books for sure.
Well, yeah. Well, he started popping up on my YouTube feeds. And again, you talked about intuition. So I've read his book, I've taken his class when he was with Oprah. I've always been in a space. I think I probably have his book on my shelf. But now I'm into walking and listening to audiobooks. And I retain so much more from audiobooks. So, so that's my thing now. So I got the book on Audible, and I'm listening to it again. And I'm remembering, I'm retaining a lot better because I'm moving, it's in my ear, you know what I mean? And but yeah, so that's basically Eckhart Tolle is it's just amazing. All right, so that was actually great. So now you also have a 5-step process to help people cope with their setbacks and challenges after their sucky moments. I love that word, sucky moments. And you list a lot of sucky moments a minute ago. So did we cover the 5-step process already, or because you were talking about that a minute ago?
Yes. So so basically, and I love the way that you're framing this, because I think it's so important for context as we are going through. There's 3 parts of the book, and there's 3 parts of That Suck Now What, where the first part is that magical moment of suck. And the magical moment of suck, and of course we've talked about so many different types of suck, and that's kind of where the book starts, where it's, gosh, that sucked. We can't control what happened, but we can actually be in a space of vulnerability to say, wow, how am I feeling right now? I am feeling really X, Y, Z, fill in that blank, and giving yourself pause to say, wow, yeah, this actually hurts, or I'm feeling really sad right now. I'm feeling really frustrated right now. And many times when we go through a sucky moment, it's so easy for us because our brains want to gloss over it. But what we really want to do is we really want to give ourselves the awareness and the space to actually say out loud and identify the feeling that we are actually feeling. Because most of the times we're ruminating in our head, we're getting really upset. We have our physical attributes where, we clench our fists or we clench our jaws or we, raise our shoulders up. And that's like for myself, it's like I get really like, I want to try to control something. And then we move into part 2 of the book, which is called Your Bounce Factor. And in your bounce factor, yes.
Yeah,
So,
you were telling me about the level 2. Go ahead.
yeah, so part 2 of the book is when we get into, the bounce factor. And as we've already kind of illustrated, there are 4 pillars of your bounce factor. And then we get into part 3 of how we actually fly forward once we've strengthened our bounce factor, and how we fly forward past any suck that we come across, which we've also gone through, which is, the falling stage, igniting stage, just to recap everyone, the rising stage, the magnifying stage, and then we get into thriving. And that's really how you can keep both of these big tools in your tool belt. And that's literally how, the book is actually arranged. And in the back of each chapter of the book, and by the way, when you go to thatsucknowwhat.com and you actually get a copy of the book, what you'll also get is I have a great resources section, and it includes a 44-page color-coded guide on how to do this with your kids, with your families, with your team members. And it's just a great resource to see how we're actually processing a lot of the things that we go through, but that maybe we don't have time to share. And yeah, it's been such a great tool. And that's actually a free gift when you buy the book, That Sucked Now What. And you can also go to thatsucknowwhat.com/resources, and you put in your order code, and then you actually get a whole list of resources, including the 44-page guide as well.
Okay, so that's amazing. All right, so yeah, so you've just told us, that was my question. Tell us about your book, why you wrote it. So why did you write it?
Yeah, I think that it has really been such a big culmination of all of the, points of my life, from all of the sucky moments, right? And that's why the subtitle is called, how to embrace the magic in the mess and the joy in chaos. And so I think that yeah, that's been such a big, huge culmination of literally my life's work.
Okay, that's amazing. And what do you want the listeners to walk away, the readers to walk away with after they've put down your book?
Yeah, that I think to give yourself permission to suck, and that it doesn't have to be perfect.
I like
That
that one. I like
that
that one.
we
It's not that
yeah,
bad if you suck. All right, I like that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's amazing. Well, Dr. Neeta, that was an excellent interview. I learned a few things myself. Like you said, I love that. That was great clarity that when you sit down for a conversation, you get up a different way because you've learned something. And, I was listening to Dr. Mark Harmon the other day, and he is the most, I wouldn't even know how to describe him, but he is amazing. And he has his own podcast. And he said that his mind is expanded every time he talks to someone. I thought, well, if his mind could be expanded, what about mine, right? Yeah. But yeah, so every time I sit down and I talk to a guest, I learn something from it. So today I love your analogy about how we bounce. I love your analogy about the good stress. I love your analogy about, yeah, what you do after you've endured a sucky situation for a long time, and you're ignited to do something, do something about it. That's the ignition. I usually call it the fire starter from, the burning bush kind of thing, but the fire starter, same thing. So I love that. So yes, anyone listening to our conversation, definitely You know, whether you heard Dr. Neeta's story, but we all have a childhood. We all have a past. We all have moments in our past. One of the big things about Eckhart Tolle's book that, I'm focusing right now is the pain body. We all have a pain body, right? And we have to recognize when our pain body is triggered, and the way to do that is to, understand your past and understand, get clarity on your past. And that is basically what Dr. Neeta is taking you through the stages, and my love, to thriving, because you have to go through this. And any coach will tell you the first step is clarity, clarifying, understanding yourself, understanding, what you still have and you're holding on to. So that's basically what, I'm understanding that the book is all about. So yeah, so definitely go out and support her. Give us your website again, Dr. Neeta, and your social media handles so we can follow you.
Yeah. Yes. So it's called thatsuckednowwhat.com, where you can actually grab the book, get all of the resources, and it's already won 3 awards. We've already crossed at this stage over 12,000 copies globally. It's ranked #1 in stress management,
Wow,
I think that,
congratulations.
yeah, it's the book that you can gift to a friend and give
Mm.
to your work colleagues. And I wanted it to be, something that we can all connect to. And you can find all my offerings there as well. I also have a podcast called The Brave Table, where we drop episodes twice a week on how to be brave in your life and in your actions as well.
And are you in social media?
Yes, I'm actually Neeta Bhushan everywhere on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. NeetabHushan.
All right, awesome. Well, guys, for regular listeners, you know that a transcript of my conversation with Dr. Neeta will be on the show page, which is blog.myhelps.us. It will be linking out to her book, linking out to her website, and also linking out to her social media handles so that you can follow her and, yeah, get this life-changing information, to bounce back. Yes, so life sucks. Now what? Hey, don't be a victim. Don't be a victim. So definitely, thank you. I will definitely tune into your podcast as well, The Brave Table, to hear some stories on resilience. Love that word. And just making, this life the best that you can. We're all going to be thrown curveballs, and it's, you need to move on. You need to figure out a way, either by yourself, by reading books, or get coaching, how to get to your next level. So thanks again, Dr. Neeta. No, I'm gonna mess up your name now at the end here. Dr. Neeta, for coming on the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio podcast and television show. Before we wrap up, any last words?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Well, listen, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you're listening to this on iTunes, we'd love for you to rate and review. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to subscribe. So until next time, namaste.